It's a Marvel Monday, and I was in the mood to get controversial, so here's my top 10 Marvel movie hot takes. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your Marvel movie hot takes, your unpopular opinions when it comes to Marvel movies. Obviously, everything that everyone is sharing down below in the comment section, everything I'm saying in this video are intended to be unpopular opinions. We're going to disagree. Let's just keep it respectful. And if you're someone that likes to click the dislike button anytime I say something that you disagree with, you might as well just click the dislike button right now. One more thing before we get started. People frequently ask me about where I get my posters, my Funkos, and what gear I use for my videos. There's a link down below in the description that has a whole list of all of it and where you can pick it up. So check it out if you're interested, and let's get started. Kicking things off, I've always preferred Terrence Howard over Don Cheadle as Rhodey, and every time I rewatch Iron Man, I'm so disappointed that we never got to see Howard in the War Machine costume, especially when you have that scene where Howard looks at the suit and says, "Next time, baby," and I go, no, we never got to see that. The reason for this is pretty simple. I just think there's much better rapport between Robert Downey Jr. and Terrence Howard. The way the dynamic between them works in this movie, where you can see there's a respect, you can see that they enjoy each other's company, they have banter that goes along with one another, but they feel like two bros that are friends. And when you start moving into Iron Man 2, pretty much all the way up until Endgame, Rhodey becomes more like this authority figure trying to like get his buddy to behave as opposed to just two buddies. I just don't think they've ever gotten the dynamic right ever since then. And even though Rhodey's been very prominent throughout these movies, until Endgame, he never even really got to go in the spotlight. So I've just always preferred the performance and the dynamic of the Terrence Howard version of Rhodey in these movies. Even as the military guy, I thought he fit that role better. As much as I enjoyed Don Cheadle as an actor, I just never have quite seen him as Rhodey, maybe until Endgame. Number 9, I've always kind of felt that Blade Trinity is bad, but it's an absolute blast. Now, if you've watched a bunch of my other videos, I have it in my bottom 10 comic book movies of all time, and that's more of a quality level when it just comes to the plot composition, character arcs. Did they leave a whole bunch of plot lines lingering? Absolutely they did. Does it make any sense? Not really. But is the movie fun? Yeah, that movie's a whole lot of fun. This is actually why I do both letter and number scores, because there's movies that just have something about them that's appealing, where at the same time you can look at it and be like, this isn't really good. Blade Trinity is one of those movies for me. A big, gigantic part of that is that you have Ryan Reynolds as Hannibal King basically doing a prototype of Deadpool. It's not as refined, it's not as good as what he did in the Deadpool movies, but it's the same superhero with an attitude, with a mouth, dropping one-liners, Ryan Reynolds' personality just oozing out of the character. Also, Jessica Biel's a lot of fun in it. You got Patton Oswalt. And as much as there's things about it that are a huge drop in quality from the first two movies, the action is still quite well done. And I just enjoy going to the world of these Blade movies that David Goyer brought to us. So while this is a movie that it's kind of a disaster in most regards and when it comes to story, I still have a lot of fun with it. Number 8, Spider-Man Far From Home is an entertaining Marvel product, but a fumble when it comes to the story. I have this term I use when it comes to blockbusters that are really enjoyable, but not very good when you get to the substance. I call them Taco Bell movies. They're cinematic fast food. They're cooked with a lot of grease, a lot of butter, a lot of sugar, so they're enjoyable to consume, but at the heart of them, there's a lot of problems, and that's kind of my take on this movie. Most of the jokes pretty well land for me. The action sequences with Mysterio are really cool. Jake Gyllenhaal's a lot of fun to watch. The cast are all charming and likable. But the story to this one about the Edith glasses just doesn't make any sense whatsoever as to why Tony Stark, who was trying to disarm in the original Iron Man, suddenly creates this gigantic armor around the world that's in glasses that he would give to a teenage boy who was dead at the point in time he would have programmed them.
Not a great plan.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, especially with all the other people he's connected to, Pepper, all of this, why he would give them to Spider-Man, who has been dusted. The central plot line of it is just too big of a hole. And then beyond that, the movie continually makes it clear that Peter Parker wasn't the right person to get the glasses, as he almost kills everyone on the bus, and then he gives them away to a supervillain that he'd met the day before. But at the end of the movie, Happy's like, oh, I mean, Tony was a flawed man, and he doubted himself constantly, but he never doubted himself about this. What? Why? He never doubted him that a kid should have this, an immature kid? Obviously, he shouldn't have them. And so just stuff like that, it really bogs down the story when the central plot line has so many gigantic holes in it for me. Number 7, I find Ronan to be a lot more compelling villain than Ego. Now, granted, I don't think that Ronan is a top-tier great Marvel villain. I just think that Ego is a very bland, boring villain played by a charismatic actor. When it comes to Ronan, he's often criticized as one of the worst villains inside the MCU because he is pretty one-dimensional. But at least he's a true believer in something that acts consistently throughout all of his appearances. I understand his motivation. I understand what he's doing. He's someone crazy enough to defy Thanos. So there's a little bit in there that's kind of interesting that I can track along with what's going on. When it comes to Ego, as much as I love Kurt Russell and think that he's fun to watch on screen, I mean, the whole story here of his motivation, what is he trying to do in regards to the galaxy, or even in regards to trying to get his son to join in with him, just doesn't make any sense to me. The way that he's used as a guy that's like taking naps and playing catch, and then he's a sociopath out to kill everyone, I don't think that works particularly well to draw me in to care about what he's doing. I don't understand what he's doing. I don't understand why he would do it this way or why he would think this would be effective. And then even the way it happens that he's this horrible monster that's killed thousands of Star-Lord's brothers and sisters, the movie never even allows us to care about that because it just kind of glosses over it. And so I just don't think he was well written. Next up, I think The Incredible Hulk is a good film. It's just an odd MCU film. A lot of people consider The Incredible Hulk to be one of the worst movies in the MCU, this total disaster, throwing all sorts of language at it. And every time I rewatch the movie, I go, yeah, it feels weird in this franchise, but I don't really know what you're seeing here. I don't really understand your criticisms of the film. Could it use more jokes? Sure, maybe it could have a couple more jokes to fit better in the MCU, but you have a character with a clear motivation to try and cure himself that's trying to explore certain options while being chased by someone else whose motivation is to study him, dissect him, and learn about him and control him. And then you have evil soldier guy that just wants more power to be great soldier guy. Everyone has a clear motivation and their paths intersect on this journey, but it's not like there's clear arcs for everyone. There's clear conflict for everyone. When Hulk shows up, each of the action sequences are different. It's not just repeating the same type of Hulk sequence. You have one that's in the dark and it's kind of horror-like. The second one is in the daylight and he's battling a bunch of gigantic ships. The big final battle at the end of it is two Hulk monsters duking it out. And so it feels different. There's progression of the story. There's character arcs. But tonally, yeah, it's different, but I've just never understood why people hate this movie or treat it like it's garbage. It's just an odd film for this franchise. Along those same lines, I've always thought that Edward Norton fit Bruce Banner much more than Mark Ruffalo. Now, I think they've done a good job of writing Mark Ruffalo's version of Bruce Banner. We've gotten a lot of time with him, and they've learned how to use the character in a bunch of different environments, given him different arcs. So he's been written well, and Mark Ruffalo is a good actor. He can be funny, he can be likable, he can be relatable, he can be dramatic. He can play all of the different dynamics, in which case he's good in all these movies, but when I naturally think scientist guy, my image of Bruce Banner in my mind always seems more akin to Edward Norton in The Incredible Hulk than anything that they've ever really done with Mark Ruffalo. The way that he plays scientist guy just seems a little bit more believable to me, that he's like very skinny in it, the way that you have him doing all sorts of breathing exercises and stuff can buy him as this guy that's trying to calm down and not get angry. And even the nature of that movie ties a little bit more into so much of my experience growing up with Hulk. But it just fits it better to me. And that's not that Mark Ruffalo did anything wrong. I just don't think the casting is quite as in line as Edward Norton was. Number 4, Spider-Man losing his powers in Spider-Man 2 just doesn't make any sense to me, and it hurts the film. This is a movie that does so many things so well, builds on the previous movie, has another great villain, and it's always a film that's been held back for me because of this one specific plot line where they're trying to have Peter Parker dealing with the tension of trying to have a job, trying to have a relationship, family obligations, and being Spider-Man, and the stress of it causes him to literally lose his powers. And it's always felt to me like one of these things where the screenwriter read an article about, yeah, sometimes people lose abilities because of this. And so that's, of course we can do this too. And it just feels like such a gigantic stretch in the moment that all of these actual biological functions that they've shown us, like actual hooks in his fingers and things like that, and organic web shooters and strength, suddenly disappear and he reverts back to totally normal because he's bummed out about being Spider-Man. There's too much of a gap there for me in my suspension of disbelief. Now, I understand I am watching a movie about a guy bitten by a radioactive spider that gains powers, but there should be some logical consistency in the way that the world works. I wish they had found a different way to tell this plot line, and people have DM'd me to try and explain it to me. I'm not confused by it. I'm not unfamiliar with the rationale for it. I just don't think it works. Real quick, before I give you my top 3 hot takes, remember to share yours down below in the comment section. Of course we're going to disagree. These are hot takes. So just be respectful in our disagreement. If you got to click the dislike button, I get it. You're supposed to dislike what I'm saying in this video. That's the appeal of it. Also, remember, if you're interested in where I get my posters, my Funkos, all that stuff, I got a list down below in the description. And at that link, you can figure out where you can pick some of that stuff up too. In third place on here, I think X-Men Days of Future Past is the most overrated of the X-Men movies. Now, I enjoy this movie. If you've ever seen me talk about it, I do like this movie. It does a lot of things well. I like time travel stories. So this isn't to say that I think it's a bad movie. I would, of course, give it a positive review. But a lot of people, they kind of put it on this top shelf of X-Men superhero movies. Like, it is way up here. And I've just never had that experience with this film. I've always been like, yeah, that was well done. I didn't feel quite as much as I felt I probably should have, given all the ingredients that are in place here, that it's a time travel story, universes colliding. It never hit me all that well. Even some of the stuff where you have kind of broken Charles Xavier that should be really powerful stuff. I'm like, this is good, but it's not that top tier. It's not the emotions I felt like with Logan, which those are the top tier films for me. Like, every time I rewatch X-Men First Class, I go, man, I need to watch this more. This movie does so many things so well, and it's such a cool vibe. And every time I watch X-Men Days of Future Past, I'm like, oh, I mean, that was good. I just don't feel what all these other people seem to feel when they're watching it. Our runner-up, I think Captain America: The Winter Soldier is the most overrated MCU film. Once again, if you've watched my rankings or my review of the film, I'm very positive on it. I give it a very positive review, and it's placed really nicely on my ranking. However, I don't have it like top tier. It's not even in my top 5, I don't think. And every time I post my MCU rankings, people are in shock and awe that I don't have it in my top 3. And it's just never been that movie for me. And I actually struggle a little bit to understand where some people are coming from. Like, I understand it's well made, hence why it is in my top 10, hence why I have given it a good review. I just don't understand people that just see it as this categorically different movie that, oh, the characters are just so much deeper and the themes so much richer and the plot's so much more complex. I don't know, is it? I mean, there's still like a talking exposition computer in it, and still it's with a helicarrier trying to blow up cities and stuff like that. Still has all this stuff that you get in a comic book movie. There's just complexity in the fact that the authorities we thought were good guys turn out to be bad guys. It is a political thriller. I get all that. That's why I enjoy it. I just don't see what some other people are seeing in it. But coming in at number 1, I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is the most distasteful and unpleasant MCU film. Now, I think there's worse made MCU films. I think there's objectively worse films, but this is the one to me that with the plot line he chose, the themes he tackled, and the tone under which James Gunn tackled these themes, it's just the one that puts the worst taste in my mouth. And there's a whole bunch of different reasons for that. He tried to do a character study and break up the team and set them on all these different paths. But the way he did that, with having Rocket just being self-destructed, it just is not compelling to me at all that would be the inciting incident for a story like this. The nature of the relationship between Star-Lord and Ego, I just thought was actually pretty gross the way it plays out, and just haphazardly throwing in the idea that thousands of Star-Lord's siblings have been killed by Ego, but he's only bummed out about his mom. I don't think that did not sit well with me at all. The fact that a child is tortured and the next scene is Looney Tunes humor. Every time I watch this movie, I like it a little bit less, and I notice something else about it that bugs me. I really did want to love this movie when I went into it because I love the first movie so much, but it was a major disappointment. And every time I share these opinions, the comment section goes bananas and gets very angry with me. So without question, this is my number 1 Marvel hot take. If you want more Marvel content that's a little bit more positive, check out that playlist right over there. Be sure to share your hot takes down below in the comment section in a polite, respectful fashion. And if you're interested in where I have my posters, Funkos, all that fun stuff, check out that link down below. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.